Hello, everyone. Big group today, over 200 folks. So we'll give y'all a second to roll in. Welcome to the webinar that is only going to talk about intakes today. So if that's not what you're in for, then you can exit without any judgment here. So welcome to the Help Seeker webinar on tackling intakes. And we're going to get started in a second. We're just going to give everybody a chance to settle in. And while we do that, let's say hello do some shout outs in the chat. Also tests the chat out. So say hello, and I'll say hello too. And this is Alina Turner, and joining you from Treaty 7, Mohkinstsis, Calgary, Alberta. No snow today, but it's been torrential rain, and now I'm bracing for the mosquitoes. So let us know how things are in your neck of the woods. It's always fun to learn about Canada here, being kind of a Canadian shop and working in a really cool place. But we're not exactly the best for weather, are we? Hello, Whitby, Ontario. Crystal from Atikokan, St. Paul, Alberta. Winkler, Manitoba. Ashley, Treaty 1, Manitoba. Rain, thanks. Yeah, you got the rain too. Halifax, hopefully you don't got rain. Awesome place. I was just saying, if people don't go to Halifax, haven't gone to Halifax, take an awesome holiday there. Really good oysters, like just seafood, just over there. And if you're a settler family or you've got settlers in your genealogy, so many folks came through Halifax in those early migrations. A really cool history there too. Muskoka, Ontario. Yeah, Pier 21, exactly. Not my family, but Travis's family. We came in the 90s from Romania via plane, so we were fresh off the airplane, not off the boat. Calgary, we got Darren. Happy monsoon season has paused. Agreed. If we got people that are not from Canada, you're also really welcome here too. So by all means, not we're a all-inclusive place here, all very welcoming. So for those of you that, like I said, are just logging in, we are taking a deeper look at intake. So concept being better intake, better decisions. And the folks that are here in the room are primarily from the nonprofit or government sector that are servicing folks that are experiencing different social challenges. So could be on the health side, could be on the safety side, could be on housing and homelessness side, but that's the commonality. It's the social sector. And whether you're working in a municipality, an FCSS, let's say in Alberta, or you're a shelter provider in Toronto, or your domestic violence prevention organization in Manitoba, you're all having to think about how do people find us? What's their first experience of us? And how do we know that we have a good program fit or not? And that usually happens in, the so-called intake process. So we're going to take a deeper dive into it. I'm going to share what I'm seeing and my perspectives on it. And you might totally disagree, and that's also okay because I'd love to say that there's this perfect playbook, and the reality is that that's not true. Everybody's program tends to be a bit of a special snowflake in a way, and that's also good. That's okay, right? It's how do we talk about the aspects of the snowflake and how do we communicate about the snowflake amongst different stakeholders, importantly, the client, and importantly, your partner organizations that are sending people to you. And then that reflection back, how am I sending people to other organizations? What is their intake process look like? So lots to dig into. I'm sure we're going to have lots of feedback from all of you as well. And very cool to see everybody's land acknowledgement too. Like I think you're all part of the community here. We always start with that, and I know it's passe, but not for us, and not in this like the one place that it's important to ground ourselves in that because the overrepresentation is still huge in our sector of Indigenous people. So those colonialism impacts have to be acknowledged. I think just even if it is a small reminder at the beginning of a webinar, because that also plays into how do we ask questions about indigeneity? How do we ask questions about ethnicity at intake as well? So with that being said, I'll start off with some more general remarks, more, I don't want to call them theoretical, but we'll tell you guys what, this system or the academics say we should be doing, or people who theorize more about these issues. And then we'll get into the practical stuff as well, and how I'll show you how one organization is tackling this. And of course, I'll dig into how do you make this thing smooth and digital, but acknowledging that, there's a lot of stuff that might still, that no, it's no matter how awesome your digital intake or your paper intake is, it's still people gig. It's people job at the end of it. So hopefully we are good to go here. Yeah, and my team's telling me that we are open and ready to rock. Okay, so a little bit about better intake and better decisions, and I will just actually go into slideshow mode so you're not seeing the bit of a mess that is my desktop here. So we'll talk about why intake is really critical infrastructure, where it breaks down and what it costs, 4 principles of better design and where to start. And then I'll look at, like I said, I'll look at some of the work ahead. And here's the concept. It's not just paperwork. It's not just the stuff you have to file. It's really critical infrastructure as well, because everything downstream, your data, your reporting, your coordination, and the client start of that trust relationship begins with that interaction with you as well. And I'm wondering if is anybody from Maybell here? Because I might actually use you guys as an example as people that are starting to figure this out. Just say hello in the chat if anybody's there from Maybell Developments. It's one that I really liked what they're taking on. Oh, hi, Michelle. Michelle, yeah, I might actually like use some of our conversation this week. We had a really good convo about their intake process, and it's a cool one because it shows how one organization's like really digging into this, and I mean, Michelle, I'm morning. Yes, please do. Okay. Yeah. And it's fresh in my head. So, and Michelle, you can totally chime in here and tell me if I'm getting it wrong. But my convo with Michelle this week, and there was somebody, I'm not sure who was in the background of you, Michelle, chiming it from outside the screen, but we were talking about what makes sense at what stage and how much of this paperwork is necessary. Like, how much are we putting people through way too early, or do we really need to collect that, right? And I think that's exactly the right convo to be having, especially when you're thinking about what am I collecting in paperwork that needs to come up in the case process, and then how is that also expressed in my funding process as well. So with Michelle's blessing, thanks, Michelle. I'll dig into that a little bit further as we get into it as a really good example, because they're in the middle of it, right? And it's like it's just a fresh case study that an organization is really digging into right now. So, and the reason we want to spend time on it is you all obviously do these intakes all the time, and you spend that 20 to 30 minutes to understand somebody, and they're usually in a crisis situation. And that intake form decides what gets recorded, how it's categorized, and whether you're going to be actually using it again, or is this an exercise you're just doing because you have to, because you're going through the motion and the client is going through the motions with you. They're going to feel that as well, and that 20 to 30 is going to tell them a lot about, what is this program about, or what is this organization about. It's those first impressions with you, and then let's say it is a good fit and you end up accepting the client in that 20 to 30 minutes, whether you were going through the motions or not, it's going to tell them a lot about what their experience in the program is going to be. So you want that 20 to 30 minutes to be solid, to be good. And let's say it's not a successful application, it's not a good fit. You also don't want to re-traumatize that person or disrespect that person. So it's also about their experience of the system. You're a representative of a bigger community system too. So it's really consequential. Intake sits at the top of everything in this process, right? So there's obviously where they find out about your program to begin with. So intake actually begins much earlier than them sitting down for an intake into the program. It actually begins with them searching out your program and finding out about the program and wanting to apply, right? So think about that. How easy is it for people to find out about you? A lot of us sometimes don't want people to find out about us because we have way too many people on the wait list. That's also okay to say online as because people search and partners search. So if you're a kind of a closed book, that also says something that you're not being forthcoming, or there's this first impression that you don't want people to find you. It's also okay to say, hi, we're an awesome program. We do amazing work, but our wait list is 10 years deep. So absolutely, you can apply, but we want to be transparent. Here's where you're going to be on the wait list, right? My mom's actually applying to assisted care right now, and I'm helping her through that. And I can't tell you how hard it is to be an applicant and to get the answer like, meh, don't know, don't know, don't know. It's from a user perspective, from somebody that's she's an immigrant, low income. Obviously, she's got me as a support person. But on the other side of it, I'm like, man, I just tell me, right? Just tell me to move on. Just tell me to figure something else out. It sucks. And of course, you've got the problem of applying everywhere. So if there's a way, and this is what we're doing at Maybell, to let the customer or user or the applicant know where they're at in the queue, right? And when their application pops up for review, and they're okay with getting an email because there's a safety consideration here too. Let them know where they're at, and if they move up the queue, they get a notification as well, right? You can do that, right? The technology is not crazy. It's not a big deal. If it doesn't do that, then please call Help Seeker, right? Our software does do that. So intake, client records, reports and dashboard, funding decision, that intake piece is absolutely essential. And how that intake becomes a client record is also another phase I want to speak about. And again, I'll demo this stuff with Maybell. It's a work in progress, as Michelle will tell you. We just started our first kind of meeting on it was like a day ago. So it's fresh, but the insight is we don't want intake to be onerous on the client. And if that initial intake says, you know what, there's a good chance then okay, here's the deeper intake, but we're not gonna like, pepper you with 200 invasive questions in a overwhelming form off the top if it's a no-go, right? So splitting the intake into separate pieces and gating it based on eligibility criteria is really nice as well. And then ensuring that whatever happens at intake populates the client record so that you're not re-asking them to say, hey, now you're actually accepted in the program. Now let me ask you all those questions again. Well, I already did this. Well, yeah, but that was for intake. Okay. No. Like, don't do that. Like, just make sure your intake process feeds into the client record. And then again, when it's up to reporting and dashboards, and somebody says, well, how many applicants did you have, and how many of them did you accept? You already have this data. It's all being carried through. So then when it comes to funding decisions, et cetera, and obviously you're in this space where you need to justify everything nowadays. Your funder has that, and your board of directors has that information, and all comes out of that original intake form from the client. So that's kind of the big picture. Now I think it makes sense to show you again some examples, and I pulled these up again. Let's see what Michelle's saying. Regina, oh yeah, there you go. Okay. So I'll show you what their current process is, the one that we're digitizing essentially. Document, let's see. Okay, you'll just have to put up with my nasty full screen here for a second while I make it bigger. Okay, so this is their form currently. And as you can see, it's big. And like, Michelle, you know it's big. And it's hard, right? It's hard to fill out for somebody. Um, so, what we're doing is essentially with Michelle's kind of support is thinking through, well, what do we actually need to do at the initial application? Like this is too much. The poor people are going to be, and to be fair though, they do have kind of they did come up with this concept of like let's have two forms, right? So this is an initial form, okay? And I like the concept that there's two forms, right? Because it does tell you, hey, here's the thing, here's some stuff. But on the other side, it's still really big, right? And it's PDF, and like PDFs are a pain in the butt because most people don't like fill in things kind of on their phone, right? So I do appreciate that it's A and B, the A and B forms, but I think we can do better. And I think and I think that's what Michelle's saying too, is that we want to do better than that. And so that's the concept of going to digitization. And making sure that obviously the form still saves as a PDF because you need to have the signature and all those things. But also applying a couple other things. The grade 6 reading level, so that's huge. Also, turns out that they actually have more than one program. So there's the Lillian Village Housing and there's the encouragement program too. So, you know, letting the clients know like, hey, which one are you actually applying for? Also explaining it to them in a nice, easy way, right? So this, yikes, right? This, okay, there's an application, there's going to be a conversation, right? Are this is a good fit? And again, Michelle, you tell me because like we had the combo and you haven't seen my next version, but and then full application, and then there's going to be an interview, and then we're going to make a decision. I.e., just because you're filling out this form here doesn't mean you're going to get a housing placement right away. Like we got to make sure this is a supportive housing program, right? It's a big commitment. We're going to be working together for years, right? So it's only fair for them to understand the process. So what are staff considering? Whether you meet our eligibility, how urgent is your housing situation? This is a domestic violence kind of focus program, and lots of Indigenous folks apply here. And Michelle, Tosh, can you unmute Michelle actually? I don't know if you can, but it'd be really cool to
I'm not sure if I can.
not sure if you can. Okay. Sorry, like Travis said you were in the room, so I'm like I'm taking full advantage of you being there and us spending time together on Monday. But what this program actually does, Lillian Village, is it used to be a church parking lot. So any of you guys that have ever said it'd be really cool to convert a church or a parking lot or a church or a community facility that is underutilized into supportive housing, they actually did that. So they have um, duplexes, right? So different sides are families and lone parents typically, but also non-traditional household members, which comes into play later on. So that's who people are applying for. So it's very okay, right, to be really clear about, the process. Like it's a big thing, right? So let's say we're applying to Lillian Village Housing. Why we ask, and this is something else I wanted to go through too. There's not for some reason like we just ask, we just extract, right? Instead of actually explaining to people like why do we need to know that? Okay, and here it is, like again in grade 6 level English. These These help staff record the right record, confirm program rules, and avoid duplicate applications. Use the name you want staff to use where possible, the preferred name, right? That's another consideration too. Date of birth, again, we need to know this. This is one of those annoying things for the primary applicant that our funders require us to do. So that's why there's a little star, is like we need to be accountable for that. Another one is obviously having the gender identity. I want to say a couple of things about drop downs as much as you can, right? And of course you can have an other field and have a pop-up if you want, of course. I think we're going to do that in this use case. But you know, the more you leave it like text is okay for some stuff, but for stats, drop down, please, please, please. Okay, that it becomes terrible situation otherwise. So, and then of course here the interpreter and language support. What language would you like to? And then this stuff, it's not hooked up right now, but it's actually hooked up to all the top 20 languages in Regina. So that again, we collect good data up front. Email address, obviously, town. Again, these fields, the more you can connect them to drop downs. So this one, it's not connected in this one because it's a draft, but in the live one, it's connected to all the CSDs, the municipalities, the official municipalities of Canada. There's, I think, 3,600. Sounds like a lot, but it's actually live. Like you just say, start typing and it just auto-populates. Okay, this is the interesting one. So originally, and if you recall in these applications, who's going to be living with you, right? And so they absolutely had this in here. And Michelle was really insistent, like as we digitize, we're also, you know, sometimes people have more than 4 and people sometimes have more than 2. So you need to understand that as well, right? So making it like you're not creating these limits and creating this other dependent aspect is really core. And then also same thing here, right? Household member and who they are, right? Other relative, other adult. Now, do you need to know that it's your auntie 3 removed? Not right now, not in the application, right? You can absolutely later on. And then of course, if I'm expecting and I have kids who may return with me, right? So all this stuff are things, as you can tell, they're relevant to this particular program. Your program will probably have these things too, but for them, it was really important for them to understand, like, how big can this family get? Because they're applying to a supportive housing program that only has a certain number of bedrooms, right? So there's a limitation to these. And we just need to know kind of what the shape of that family is. And it's not a yes and no, as you'll notice. We just need to understand this because we want to understand your household formation. Okay. And then your circumstances. So this is another one that, again, how you ask about this is really has to be sensitive, right? We need to understand the urgent and safety and housing needs. But we want to be trauma informed. So check only what feels safe to share here. You don't need to write trauma details. Okay. Like we don't need to make you relieve some of these things, but this is how we prioritize, right? So we do need to understand these components because this is how, for better or worse, we have criteria and there's so many families applying. We do need some way of prioritizing, right? So that's what these are. Now, check boxes, of course, easier to do. And then of course, the declaration of consent, okay? There's obviously a lot more to it. And so that's what I wanted to say about but that's it, right? Easy. I don't want to say easy peasy, but easy enough. Okay. The full application. So now the full application gets pre-filled. So you're not redoing it again, but now you can have a deeper look. So now when we start going through that process, you're not talking about all these things. If you recall, you've already filled these out, so they pre-populate. But let's see where we go deeper, right? So now we're doing the fuller application, and now you're doing that interview, you're sitting down and you're having that conversation. And here you do need to talk more details. And here, hey, have you stayed in social housing before? Yes. Do you have housing references? Is it safe, right? What about telling us about your support networks? Okay, if anybody, can you rely for support? How did you hear about us? Right? But this is more like an interview guide because it's that first conversation, and you're talking about this stuff. You can share this with the client ahead of time so they can prep for that conversation, that interview. It can be done on the phone, it can be done in person, but it depends on the program's context. But this is, and giving some of these hints so they know kind of what to expect. Obviously, you can also do it in online or with a support person as well. But here you can get a little bit more, deeper income and financial situation, right? So for these guys, some of these things are more relevant. Safety planning, okay, that tells you again more about the situation, and then updating the consent. So this is just a little kind of work in progress because it's literally taking something like this, right? And making it digital so that the client can fill it out really quickly, or the person making the referral can fill it out quickly, and then it can actually populate their their case. And we'll kind of go through that flow. Yeah, feel free to drop any questions. Absolutely. So I'll go back to my presentation now that I've kind of also updated our Maybell colleagues on where they're at, where their process is at. Let's see, where did I leave? Yeah, there we go. Slideshow. So that's this whole concept of breaking things up. And so this concept of why things go wrong and where it goes wrong is worth talking through a little bit too. And again, what you end up doing is if you don't have this really intentional process, you have the stuff workarounds, right? So you have the sticky spreadsheets, you have the placeholder data. So you do what you need to do in that big PDF, and then you make margin notes, and you have a secret stash of applications or phone call stickies that are on the side desk, and never actually makes it into your database either. So I do want to have a talk in a second about why that first form feeding into your database, or it really being an extension of your client records, of your case management system, is really core. Because if you don't, then you are going to have that intake data separate from your database proper. And that is where the repeated stories come in. That's where you end up with oh crap, where I have my PDFs, okay, and then I have my case management system, my forms that I have to fill in, my record keeping, and my case file is yet another thing. So all this stuff should actually be one flow, right, for your staff and for your client. The client sees the stuff that's easy to see, but it auto-populates the rest of your record system. And more importantly, is a true representation of your workflow, of your best practice work. So you shouldn't pretzel around your data collection. The data collection should be a proper reflection of your best self, right? As a case manager. So things like remembering how that you haven't checked in with a client, or remembering or getting a notification that you have a new intake application, and moving that application to the wait list, and then processing it, including, hey, reviewed, still on wait list, reviewed, stayed on wait list, but you're number one on the wait list, okay? And on average, this obviously means that the next available spot, you're gonna get the first interview, right? So that ability to communicate with people in your intake process is key. And of course, ensuring that data is up to date on the folks that are currently in your system is going to make sure that you can take in that next intake as well. So let's go back to showing you what this looks like in practice. And can I get a reaction if showing you stuff and how it looks makes sense, Like, is it give me a thumbs up or not? Yeah, okay. Okay, because I figured I wasn't sure how, okay, good. Okay, then sorry, Michelle, I'm going to show them more because why not? Because I already have your system up. So let's talk about like what Michelle sees, right, when she opens up her system. And yes, like this stuff is like only I see that because I'm on the back end building stuff. But what Michelle sees in her cases, right, is actually really interesting. And um, so I'll go through this because it's important for you to understand this. It's all contextual in the program. So like I was saying before, here's their database, right? It's fake data, so don't worry, right? Not to worry. Actually, like let's make this a little bit more shareable. Okay, let's see. Sorry, I just want to make sure you guys are seeing it properly. Stop share, and I'm gonna do it one screen at a time. There. Okay. You guys can see this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Okay, so this is their dashboard. Okay, so this is what their staff see when they log in every day. Lilium Village, this is their Lilium Village view, not the other program. So they've got their duplexes, like I was saying, and this is the church parking lot converted, right? So you got 1, 2, 3, 6 duplexes, and then obviously there's each of them has a household in them, 1A, 1B, 1C, okay? And yellow means that the acuity is moderate. There's an exit risk, so they're on watch, right? So this tenant just come more row, obviously synthetic, not to worry. The unit condition is good. They've had an incident, no work orders, and the support services are parenting, childcare, faith, and finance. Okay, fine. Okay, but as you can see here, um, she's got an unassigned unit. She's got vacancies. I know that's not true, Michelle, but like just go with it. So she's got vacancies. She has to go into her wait list, and she's got some over here. And interestingly, they're all on risk, right? There's stuff going on in all these. I should have made some that were like high risk and low risk, but you get the idea. Risk, low risk would be this little, like would be here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Risk low, risk watch, risk elevated. Vacant, size of the dot is the support density, and lines. If a line shows up, it means that there's cross household problems. So the reason why we want to understand this is because it tells us how many folks we can take in. So the intake is a factor of that. So that means your data set needs to be up to date so that your intake process can actually be accurate. The other piece I would consider you to think about too is as you're creating new intakes, considering the tenure, the acuity of the clients to make sure that the level of matching from intake into your current caseload is appropriate. So we do have a half full program in this fake use case with some risk. And we can see here that they're all in that moderate acuity, and we've got one on the low end. We got nobody on the high, so we can say, you know what, let's go for it, right? Let's take a look at what some of our clients are on the wait list are looking like, and let's take a look at that. Okay, let's extend the session. So I'm looking here at the Meta application, and this is just a family that's on the wait list, right? So there's these families wait listed. The primary resident that is applicant here is Priya Meta, and they're at pre-intake, and I'm going to put Michelle in charge of them. Narrative summary, this is their application. Okay, and let's take a look at their wait list. This is their actual application. So this is what got saved on there, their little signature. Okay, so we can see there's temporary friends, stay at duty, Regina. I don't know if that's real. Children with no, independent care, no, expecting no, dependents, application submitted, household, no other household expected intake. Okay, so that's a single person. Interesting. Okay. Consent documented decision details. So I might say on this case, I'm like, single applicant, no kids, right? Maybe not as exciting. Sorry, I'm sure it's a really worthwhile fake case to consider, but we might go into our next one to take a look at another applicant. So again, we can look at, these are all, I'm sorry, they're all fake people, right? But we might go at an application priority that's a little bit different then and take a look at a different one. So let's go to this one. Okay, Whitecap application. The primary person is Danielle, and then let's look at their application. Primary applicant, legacy household. Do they have anything on file? No. Do I understand the guarantee? Sure. Okay, and then we can take a look at this one as being potentially a more interesting one because they might have their actual household and consent at a different stage in that process. So that's kind of my point about understanding where you're at before you take in another one. And so if you do that properly, then all those, as you guys saw in those cases, they were all populated from the form itself. So this thing, okay, feeds feeds all these things. That's why all that crappy dashboard data was in there. And so now Michelle can actually look at all the applications and she can actually, and this is, we haven't talked about her criteria and how she wants to, how she wants to accept people, right? But let's see somebody that she has so-called accepted. Ashley, demographics, woman, Cree, First Nations, Indigenous spiritual, okay. Household, okay. Independently care for kids living, yeah, okay. Screening, okay. Well, this is fake data, but we can now understand what's happening in this family. Do they have accessibility needs? Do they have accommodation needs? What are their strengths? Community activities, practical strength, relational strength. What is their acuity? Okay. What is their program enrollment? What connections do they have? Okay, they're living in Unit 1, their address is Regina, and then what kind of activities. So we've got some case notes, monthly review, kids adapting well to childcare, Ashley's attending work life, cultural preferences discussed. So you're able to start tracking this stuff and are able to see if we have any of these relationships mapped. Yeah, there we go. So here's their kids, dependent kid number 2, and their caseworker. So we can start to see in this tenancy, in the White Bear tenancy that's living in Unit 102, what's going on there too. Yeah, apparently. But again, this is all fake data, but gives you a sense of why this family never had to say their background again, right? Because them being Cree came in from the intake application and then just got transferred over to their active tenancy. So, and then of course that feeds live to their current situation. So we can see if we got any damages on the units, right? Because that's another thing. And if we got any tenure situations on the units. More importantly, kind of finishing that story, how does that, oh, sorry, and what I clicked is this review impact program report that auto populates, Michelle's report to her funder. So this month, 52 people that we're interacting with, 92% occupancy. We had 69 events, one outcome, again, fake data, guys, so stay with me, but we had eligibility screening for 25, right? Our notices issued, so this is eviction notices. We had 5 case notes, maybe, and then you can start to think about that. This is how we spent our time. This is out of 69 events that our case managers participated in. It's June 4th, so pretty busy, right? Pretty busy start to the month, but we can already see like how our time is getting spent, but to which client, right? So we can also look at which client is getting all of these case notes. It may be one person, and these written notices is like, okay, written notice 1, 2, 3. Obviously, you wouldn't see that in the first 6 days of the month, but yeah, just for argument's sake. Acuity, again, the ability to see over time is obviously essential. You're doing your acuity assessment, if you remember, at intake, and because you're doing it at intake, you can now track it against that same record. And when you roll it up at the client, from the client to the aggregate level, no client stuff is on here, right? But you can actually aggregate it if you collect it properly. Same thing, because we're collecting income at intake, we can also track, hey, what's going on here? What's happening, right? What are we seeing a $200 decrease? Oh, well, because policy changed or whatever, you're tracking that. Unit occupancy, of course, and then importantly, outcomes versus targets. So in your intake process, remember those things I showed you when we talk about like what outcomes do you want to achieve, what's your goals for staying here? Those all become records on that case. And that record is started at intake. So you get a baseline, right? And then you get a baseline that you can track against, and then you're able to roll up, well, how many of my clients maintain stable housing, right? My target was 80, so far 0, again, fake data. Residents completing our faith and finance program, we wanted whatever 75%. Apparently we're at 133%, obviously, like that is not real, but let's 27% achieved employment, residents saving $500 or more, kids attending school regularly, and residents having safety plans. So you're able to get that intake and then move your case management through, track your interactions, right? And then also track your acuity changes against some of these metrics. Now, this is the one that I think is probably the interesting one. One of the things that intake is really critical for is understanding that journey. So a client can have this journey, right? So Jessica, let's say, but your cohort has a journey. So you're getting, let's say, 15 referrals, right? And then out of those, 15 applications and 4 are declined, right? So out of those 15, 4 are declined. But let's say 11 are accepted. And out of those initial applications, these ones all moved to tenancy. And out of the active tenancy, 7 were stabilized, right? And so you're able to track that journey through. And out of those 7 stabilized, 10 are transitioning, and then we've got 11 stable exits. But let's take a look down here. That active tenancy, we have 4 incidents, right? And out of those, 3 of them we were able to manage, right, through our case management. And so they're part of that good journey. One of them, we had to transition, but in our follow-up, they're still stably housed, right? So all this, right, and some might return, and that's the important part, is this returned, let's say it was 1, they could reapply, they could become another referral, they could become another application. So ensuring, I'm talking about this intake space right here, but you've got to think about it all in the context of the entire user journey, because this Jessica, right, so you can see her journey, she was one of the ones that went through this process. So she's the one that, ultimately, we saved that tenancy, but it wasn't an easy one, right? Versus this one is a pretty nice, like they came in, they just applied, they were not a referral, but they came through this way. So that's a little bit about how you go from intake all the way to funder outcomes and understanding your outcomes at that macro level. And if you're not thinking about that in your intake process, then we're gonna have big challenges later on, because you're gonna be like, oh man, how many referrals did I have? Oh, and you always get asked, like, how many referrals did you get? Out of those, how many are still housed? I don't know. But that's how you do it. This is how you do it. Let's see. Let's see about questions. Oh, yes. Will it be possible to have a copy of the slides sent by email? Of course, of course, of course. Yes. Any other questions, you guys? Because I do have 15 minutes for questions set aside. I'll throw up my And Michelle, thank you so much for like being so generous with this. This is a build that is, we started like Monday, so it's like in an active build, and it's but I just love anything that gets unused land into supportive housing. I just think that's just how to do it, and it's a permanent supportive housing program for Indigenous and not specific for Indigenous. I haven't seen that. It's immigrants as well, but lots of Indigenous overrepresentation. So I'm excited to kind of get into that part of it around OCAP and all of that too. So
Alina, we
really
have some questions here in the chat.
okay, yeah. Do you want to read them out? Because I just can't.
Yep, for sure. If an organization has several different programs, can you show number of referrals by department?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, let me see. I don't know if we did that in this. I might have to pull up or at least describe it. But let me see if I can find another example of that where we have like different referral sources is kind of what you're saying to me or what you're referring to. Um, yes, actually, no, you know what? Excuse the fake data, but actually I think we did talk about that on Monday. So yeah, these are the active partners that the referrals get tracked against. Again, and then this would be your interactions. So your ability to track which partner referred which organization to which program. So you can do that by, let's say, edit. Let's see here. Yeah,
Alina,
yeah.
she's actually wanting to know about tracking by department that are making the referrals. So slightly,
Ah,
via
slightly different.
the
Okay, got it. Got it. So yeah, absolutely. So what you would do is whether it's a community partner, you would have that partner, and then you would link that partner's referral to the program that is receiving the referral, so that it would just get logged differently in the upfront. Because in this case, we were just looking at Lillian Village, and so you're only tracking this only shows the ones that are referring to them. If we switch to a different program, you would see only those that are tracking to them. Unless, Travis, I'm misunderstanding and you do want to answer it differently.
No, that works, but essentially, Doris, yes, very possible that you could track it by department. So if it's internal and all you do is have it as a drop down where you go, okay, this
Hmm.
referral came from this department and went to here, and
Yeah.
so it's in the setup of that and knowing that that's the requirement is you want to actually track it internally, not externally. Because Lena's
Ah, I see. I
external
see. Yeah.
versus the internal is what I'm hearing it as.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So in that case, you're actually doing an internal transfer potentially, or an internal referral. Yeah. Yeah.
Or a
Absolutely.
referral out to so that you could go, okay, we're
Yes.
tracking the ones that we referred out to a different department, different organization. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's right. Correct.
Uh-huh.
Cool.
Okay. Did we get that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
another question here. I manage an anti-violence team, outreach counselors, and also manage the tenancy for our nonprofit independent mixed housing. Can this
Yeah.
program be used for other services other than supportive housing?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We're like, yeah. I'm trying to think of like the
So
the
I
craziest
can
use
jump
case.
in. Those are actually kind of the sweet spot is when
Yeah.
it's like a mix of these things that typically would not make sense, where you have this really diverse range of programs all in with one organization. Yeah, we've did quite a few of those type implementations.
Yeah, I would say like our sweet spot is when it's such a grab bag of programs. Like I'm showing supportive housing, but I mean, man, like we've just done one on snowsuits, right? Like it can be anything, and or food banks or shelters or prevention programs. We're actually doing one right now at a system level. So Away Home Canada, they do capacity building to support homelessness prevention. So they're not even, their clients are actually communities. So it can be anything. It can be anything in the social sector. And it's the more complex, like the more interesting it is, because then you can, how do you ensure that the data model lets you roll up, right, from all these different types of programs. And if you're interested in a really great demo, SSTS, so this is the Indigenous Child Welfare Organization of Cowichan Tribes, landmark settlement. Like that was if anybody's following what's happening in BC around Indigenous rights and taking on their own child welfare management, they were the big settlement that kind of kicked off that entire process. So they're kind of first out. So we're doing their implementation. So they're using it for child welfare stuff, yes, but they're also using it for like human resource management and 19 different programs, everything from cultural reconnection to like wellness to, there's childcare stuff in there, housing, maintenance, and all of that. So I say that because it's another use case. And Ashley, she's the manager there because I'm giving Michelle too much airtime. I should reference Ashley. So Ashley's their COO in that organization, and she did the demo herself. She's like, I know my system better, like I'll speak to it. So she did the demo and she did a fantastic job. And that's on our webinar. So maybe we'll send that out too, because you'll see 19 different programs and how to do that.
Another question here. What is the difference between activities and case notes? Is there a recommended time frame for completing case notes after an interaction or event?
Yes. Yeah. Of course, contextual. So in terms of, and Travis is saying, make sure you stick to the intake as the theme, but I did open it up to questions, so I'm going to answer that one too. There are best practices, of course. What we end up doing is, and this is what I would recommend you do too, because I don't know your full context. And every kind of case management program is slightly different because it's like, oh, I could tell you you should write down your case notes as soon as possible. Well, you're just in the middle of a crisis. So it might need to wait till tonight, or it might need to wait till tomorrow. Like you have to be realistic about it. They always say it the sooner after the event, the better, because it's fresh. I would also say like ensuring that your data collection is live. So if you're doing an activity, having it up on your phone and then just kind of having those drop downs makes it a lot easier to just like clock it in essentially on the fly is also ideal because you don't forget then. And then making sure you set your reminders in your system to, again, so I'll speak about the intake process, but it can be applied to anything. So an activity, an intake activity occurs and you haven't done a follow-up, you can set a reminder for an automatic reminder for anything that hasn't been updated in, let's say, a week, that it automatically reminds you, and that would be, the way to go. Oh, takeaways from meeting. There's somebody asking. We provide case management. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So provide case management services for newcomers with high needs. Yeah, the youth refuge one is a really interesting example. Then I think we should probably do a webinar on them too, Trav, because that's an interesting one with this question. The case management standards that are out there, so CARF, for instance, you can also just, if you don't have anything, you can take those and apply them to your organization too. That's actually what Michelle and I were saying. I was like, do you have any any standards for how soon things should happen or how many times you touch base with a client that has a specific acuity? It's like, it's a bit of organic thing. It's like, but I would love to have a reminder from my system to tell me, hey, this client was logged as high acuity and they had a critical incident yesterday. You might want to, do a check-in today, right? So having the system prompt you as a case manager, and again, I'll speak to the, doing yourself a favor and having really easy to understand dashboards. So, and this is again something that you don't appreciate because you have staff that are logging things in too, so you don't realize that, Ashley Whitebear had is now in tier 3 intensive, right? So you're having to really kind of dig into their case because their acuity has is bumping up on the list, right? So having the system do as much of that heavy lifting and analysis for you is really, really critical because you don't see that Ashley, or Jade, right, might be serviced by another staff, and that staff is logging in different things. So, whereas yesterday you guys were all in the green, when you open up your dashboard, everybody's doing good. Today they're all in the yellow. So you might want to do a little bit more work and tracking that. So when critical incidents happen, there is standards. There's, I think it's within 24 hours for sure. I know that like a critical data breach would be, has its own standards too. So I know what those look like, and there's legal requirements. So it's not even best practice. You have to do it. Your funder demands it. So if you have a system or if you're working with us and you want to create those must-dos so that you get those prompts, or even Ashley was saying, cool, what if I don't open my system? Can I also get an email notification too to like double prompt me when these things happen? So as a manager, you want to get all your critical incidents emailed to you, or any new applications or any transitions. So those are the ones that are like, really touchy that you want to put in. Your regular case notes, I think it's, the freshest, the better. So I used to do them as soon as my appointment left, and I would just give myself 15 minutes between appointments to do that. But obviously things happen, shit happens, and you got to do what you got to do. But that's what these kind of little reminders pop-ups are like. Hey, supervisor, you've got a couple of case changes that you might want to check out. So that's taking the load off you as the human so that you don't have to remind yourself all the time, like, oh shit, when I haven't talked to that guy in forever, like what's been happening, like, oh good, my colleagues actually got it, and you can actually share those records so that you're on top of things. Maybe one more question. Anything I missed? Or Trav and Taj, anything that I should have covered off that I didn't?
I think you're good.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, Michelle, thank you for your graciousness to let me borrow you for this use case. And sorry about the fake data. You can probably imagine yourselves in it, but the takeaway is intake is not just intake. It's the first impression. Think about your impression there, and think about following up with those clients. And it doesn't mean it's more work for you. You can get systems to automatically do that so that clients have a good experience, even if they're not eligible, right? If they're not part of that process with you, because you never know, they might be your clients later on, or your clients are probably part of the same community as them. So you want to maintain that good reputation with your referral partners, your funders, and your customers, whoever those might be. Thank you so much, Michelle, again. Okay, and thanks everybody so much. We'll see you next time. Bye.